Thank you, Lykke, for being part of my little experiment where I'm doing a little bit of lockdown learning and reaching out to people who have inspired me. The reason why I'm calling you is that I wanted to have a Corona coffee break with you. Now we're talking about, I know you prefer a flat white. And for people not knowing who you are internationally, you are right now the CEO of a think tank, Europe. But you've also been a former Minister for Energy and Environment and are known for your expertise for the German market. And I wanted to talk to you about the current situation and what we can learn from it. But I wrote down 3 words that I wanted to talk to you about, but I wasn't sure if we should talk in German or in English, but I wrote down Mutterland and of course, Mauerfall and currywurst. And you probably wonder what is meant by these, but Mutterland is a word that you use for Germany. We both have a German mother, so we have a Mutterland and Muttersprache and a passion for Germany. But if you're looking at from a Danish perspective, what is happening in our Mutterland and what are we missing right now? What are you missing? And what is going to happen with our Mutterland when we look at the business structure?
Well, I would say that that so far, I mean, Germany has managed better than most other countries with the COVID-19 crisis. Also, if one looks upon its ability to actually take on a role for the rest of Europe, I think that's really what has inspired me. I mean, the very fact that Germany has taken the obligation of taking patients from France, from Italy, and has really done a lot with regards to helping neighbor countries, whereas this has not been the case in Denmark, for instance. We've not really had a focus on what can we do now that we have the situation more under control in Denmark. So I think they have been impressed by Germany. I would also say that Germany has been helped by the fact that it has this große Koalition, the GroKo, which for a long time was seen as something that was actually a problem for Germany, that it was not really able to reach decisions and so forth. But I think in this particular crisis, it has actually been an advantage for Germany to be able to have this rates of cross-border compromises with regards to the overall economic policy and also ability to help certain sectors in the German economy. But despite that, obviously Germany is really, really in trouble when one looks upon the economy. I mean, just in January, when we look upon the figures, look completely different from now. I mean, that's and that is a problem for Germany, but obviously also for the rest of Europe. Just take my Vaterland, so the father of my country, Denmark, where I'm now. I mean, our big export market is Germany, and there one can be really worried.
Yeah, and I wanted to actually look from the Danish exporters' point of view. On one hand, it's of course a critical situation, but we could also talk about potential opportunities once it opens up again, because I think you were also talking about export opportunities from a European perspective, that Europe all of a sudden becomes the insourcing market. Outsourcing was in the financial crisis, insourcing right now, and the Germans would probably have to look for suppliers closer to the home market. Maybe you could
completely agree. I mean, that's, you could say, I mean, when you had the financial crisis, we all spoke about the BRIC countries, so Brazil and China and India and Russia, and that was that was the talk of the town, and you had to basically to compensate for the overall loss of markets in Europe. Now we're going to see the exact opposite. Simply, there's now a sense that, well, you need a safe haven in this completely unpredictable turmoil situation, crisis situation, and that's going to be the single market. Who wants to, in this situation, to have lots of production far away? Everybody realizes now that the just-in-time production, well, that's fine, but probably not when you have a worldwide global virus going on. So I think you will see more insourcing to the European market, and that provides, obviously, for Denmark lots of new opportunities. But there is a but here that obviously depends upon the fact that Europe sticks together, that we are still sort of part of one single market, and that also that Italy, Spain, and so forth also make it through this crisis. Otherwise, we're going to be in really a problematic situation. And there's again a difference between Denmark and Germany, because the German government continuously says, well, I mean, if Germany is supposed to get out of this crisis, well, then we also have the rest of Europe to get through this crisis. And that's not really been that much part of the Danish discourse, but I see that happening now, actually. There's now a greater realization in Denmark that we are so much dependent upon each other.
And when it comes to Mutterland and Muttersprache, you're also famous here in Denmark for saying, du kommst durch mit Englisch, aber du kommst weiter mit Deutsch. And so German is still an important language for us to be able to speak. The proximity also makes that we have to understand the culture. But the DACH region itself, for the neighboring countries, there's still opportunities in future if we understand the German culture, the German language. Is that also your take on it?
Yeah, and I guess one can use the lockdown situation to practice German, for that matter, also other languages. But yes, obviously, I mean that we now live. I mean, Denmark will be in a situation where the German market will be even more important due to the reasons that I just mentioned. I mean, the insourcing aspect, but I think also the very fact that hopefully we will then build a new Europe, in a sense that we will not just do what we did after the financial crisis, of not change our overall sort of economy. I think it's going to be very important that we use this. I'm not going to say opportunity, because you cannot really say that such a tragic situation as COVID-19 is an opportunity, but still we have to make sure that once we rebuild our economy, we actually do it in a smarter way. So we build sort of a more green economy, a more digital economy, and goodness, we are all learning how to use the digital tools these days. And there you obviously also have great opportunities for Denmark if you look upon our overall sort of green tech economy, but also the digital area.
And one of the former videos I made, Winston Churchill was
he there?
He was not there, but he was mentioned because he said, never waste a good crisis. So that spirit, of course, be able to be creative. But when we look at Mauerfall, the reason why I also reached out to you is that we had a conversation a couple of months ago about your book about '89. And I was an exchange student in the DDR at that time. And the Mauerfall is something I actually witnessed myself. And you have really been looking into the history about the '89, the year of hope, where today, as I see, you see that we have another Mauerfall. The COVID Mauerfall is more a situation where it's not hope but fear. But it's a kind of a reverse. It's a kind of reverse Mauerfall right now, isn't it?
Yes, that's also been a point sort of that I've been trying to make sort of in the Danish debate. And I think there are some very interesting sort of comparisons here, because if you look upon sort of the New Year's Eve speeches by famous politicians, not as famous as Winston Churchill, but almost in '89, so from '88 to '89, no one predicted what was going to happen. And similarly, if you reread sort of the New Year's Eve speeches, also from Chancellor Merkel, but of Danish Prime Minister and so forth, from this year, nobody predicted anything like this. So there's this really sort of this huge surprise and shock and no preparation whatsoever. You can see clear similarities there. I think that also goes back sort of to the overall lesson of '89, that when you cannot simply just take things for granted. I mean, in the sense that when you're not really expecting anything to happen, then suddenly things start to take on speed, either in the positive or in the negative direction. '89 was, then, as you rightly point out, that was a positive development, and this one, I mean, so far obviously is a negative one. One should not dispute that at all. But obviously, it does create sort of the opportunity, in the sense that we are all sort of asked sort of to change. We all have to live up to certain tests, you could say, and we're tested by various developments. And so is the European Union, obviously.
So, well, we also have a digitaler Mauerfall. There's no question
Yeah.
that the German market will probably also see a change, that they will be more digital.
Yeah.
So there is opportunities, but it's of course not a pleasant situation.
No, but I think that's the point. I mean, what on earth do we gain from the fact by just sitting here being depressed? One obviously has to look into these various opportunities, and we can also use this to create a better sort of economy eventually. I mean, a digital economy. I think we've all learned now that we don't have to travel as much as we thought we had. Don't have to have all these meetings. Sometimes you can actually just have them via Skype and so forth. And well, obviously we've also figured out that, and I think that's probably going to change all the German debate about digitalization. You also sometimes just need to accept that obviously you need to have security and so forth, but it is vital that you can sort of trace also virus with an app, for instance. I mean, for us to get out of this lockdown.
Yeah. Now, when we came out of '89, some of it was leadership and some of it, I would say, was cultural resilience. I think that any culture has some kind of resilience. And the question here is that we are not trained in resilience as a culture. So are we fit for this more on a cultural side? Also in Germany, if we're sticking to the German side. What is your take on that?
I'd say so far, and now the Bundesliga is starting this weekend. So now there's finally hope for some of us, and that obviously is about culture and so forth.
Exactly.
No, I think that people that really sort of also in Germany have mastered this challenge in an impressive way.
Yeah.
So far, I think that well, one can only say thumbs up, but I think it's very clear that if suddenly we have a situation with a so-called second wave, then I'm not as confident how people will react, including also myself, because I mean, you can kind of, as long as you can sort of see the light at the end of the tunnel, you can sort of build up the optimism and so forth. And well, let's just keep on this lockdown period for just another week, month, or whatever. But if suddenly you have to have this situation where you have to go back again, I think that's going to be a very big test for us all. So hopefully it won't happen.
Yeah. So we want to keep the optimism, and that's why I refer to things, and even I'm bringing in the currywurst. And one of the book recommendations I got during this lockdown was Die Entdeckung der Currywurst, which is a story about post-Germany, where the currywurst was invented. They're still struggling to see if it was in Berlin or in Hamburg.
Yes.
but so the currywurst stands for resilience also after a crisis. How are we inventive? And the currywurst for me is always a kind of a break, something I miss. When we have the World Conference where all the German chambers are coming together to Berlin, one of the highlights is the currywurst break, where we're talking about business in a different setting. But,
brilliant, yeah.
But this is kind of a picture of the optimism that we can discover things. Are we there where we see opportunities still, or are we balancing that pessimism and optimism?
I think we're still in the balancing phase. I mean, I think that's very clear. I mean, also because not all countries, I mean, including Denmark, including Germany, I mean, are completely through this. I mean, we may be able to spot the light at the end of the tunnel, but I mean, but it's still far away. And if you look upon Italy, if you look upon Spain, I mean, it's even more problematic.
Yeah.
But I think that we are changing in a sense that I think that, because you refer to culture, that what I've experienced here in Denmark is that the culture has really experienced a revival. I mean, as our foreign viewers will not know this, but I mean, every Friday we Danes sort of turn on the television and sing together, basically, and also every morning. So that sort of played a major role. You also see sort of, well, I can reveal that I'm a football fanatic, so you see now old sort of football matches from when Denmark was very good back in the World Cup in '86, beating Germany 2-0 in the World Cup and so forth. So things are sort of, you're reminded by your roots in crises, and they are obviously, I think, the very fact that we have had the anniversary, so to speak, of the end of the Second World War has played a role also in this country, but also in other countries, right? We had speeches by the Queen and so forth, and Germany also obviously Stunde Null by President Steinmeier. So I think there are lots of reflections about where were we in 45, now also 30 years of German unification, and where are we now? I think that sort of forces us to reflect more than we're used to, and that's probably a very good thing, actually.
And that's actually, I think we should conclude to say, well, reflection is important, and of course having
and coffee,
and a coffee, exactly. So a coffee break and a reflection, and sometimes read things and maybe look at things from a different perspective. And I found it interesting in these talks with different people, a historical background or business background, or even a sports coach, a soccer coach that I talked to, Beck. So I'm also getting inspiration from the soccer world. And I think it was great just getting your view on where we stand and where we stand from a Danish perspective, but also with our half German background. So hopefully we can meet down there and root for the same team. I think you're a Bayern München fan, right?
Absolutely. And we'll have a currywurst.
Okay, we will do. Thanks a lot. And thanks for taking the time.